Hi, it's Kiffin Lebates here, and today I thought I would explain the MonoX hack in simple, understandable language. So for those of you who don't know, there is a DeFi protocol out there called MonoX. It's a form of cross-chain decentralized exchange, which means it allows people to move tokens from one chain to another and to swap tokens for other kinds of tokens. And they were hacked 2 or 3 days ago for $31 million worth of cryptocurrency. And how did they do that? How did the hacker manage to walk off with this sum of money? Well, to understand that, first I'm going to present you with an analogy as to how automated market makers or decentralized exchanges work. They effectively function as a sort of a marketplace in which you have baskets of different goods like onions and bell peppers and bread and things like that. And the idea is that you come along with, say, a huge quantity of onions, and what you want is bread, and you put your onions in the onion basket, and that allows you to take bread out of the bread basket. Now, what will happen is the relative prices of onions and bread will change as a result of this, because now that the stock of onions has increased, onions are considered less valuable, and because the stock of bread has decreased, bread is seen as more valuable. This keeps the whole system in balance. And MonoX is an interesting one because they don't have pairs of goods that are being looked at. They have a whole pool. The idea is to increase the size of the liquidity pool. So now I have to explain what a liquidity pool is, and that is basically the stock that you have in place in order to be able to fulfill trades. So it's no good saying that you're going to allow people to trade onions for bread if you don't have any bread. For an automated market maker to work, there has to be an initial supply, and this supply is provided by people known as liquidity providers, and they lock up their tokens in such a protocol so that they can then be used as stock in order to fulfill requests to swap onions for bread or bread for onions. So all very well and good. Well, what went wrong with the MonoX protocol? It turns out it was a programming error in that the programmers and indeed 3 auditing companies didn't think about a particular edge case that could happen because it didn't make sense to them, presumably, and they were thinking as developers and not test engineers. And the hacker used this. And the edge case is as follows. When you add your onions to the onion basket, the protocol kind of writes down the current price of onions, and then when everything's finished, it decreases the price of onions by a certain amount that it calculates based on how many extra onions you added. And similarly, when you take the bread out as the second half of your transaction, the stock of bread has decreased, and so they've written down the original price of bread, and then they bumped the price of bread up accordingly to keep everything in balance. So far, so good. Now, what the hacker did was they did something unusual and strange. They deposited and withdrew the same token. So this is like you going to the market and saying, I want to swap onions for onions. I'm going to put a bag of onions in the basket of onions, and then I'm going to take it back out again. And this is where the flaw in the protocol was revealed, because the protocol records the original price of onions, and then when the onions are added, it in a separate place records what the new price of onions should be because they've got to drop. And then when the person takes the onions back, it calculates the new price of onions by increasing it. But it doesn't increase it from the decreased value, it increases it from the base value, the starting value. And so what happened was the hacker basically deposited onions in the onions basket and then immediately withdrew them, and that caused the price of onions to rise. And then the hacker put the onions back in again and took them back out again, and that caused the price to rise more. And the hacker did this over and over again. And there's the flaw in the protocol. It should have been working out the new price of the onions from the decreased value, so it would just drop and then go back to its original value, and drop and go back to its original value. Instead, it went from its original value up to a higher value, and then up to a higher value than that, and so on, until eventually the price of onions was astronomical. And then the hacker used these now incredibly valuable onions to, in quotes, buy other tokens, or in my analogy, things like bread and bell peppers and stuff like that. So they did the equivalent of walking into the market, tossing onions in a basket and taking them out again over and over and over again, and then finally tossing the onions in one last time, and then having enough credit to go and empty all the other baskets of eggs and bread and bell peppers and that, and off they walked with it. And the reason I think, as I said earlier, that this mistake was missed is because at the moment software developers working on smart contracts and auditing smart contracts tend to be thinking like developers, not so much like test engineers. And test engineers build up the experience to think, what stupid thing could I do to this piece of code? What kind of input could I provide the code that the developer wouldn't expect because it's just stupid? Let's try it and see if it breaks the system. And if it does, you submit a bug and the developer goes, oh, I hadn't thought of that, and fixes it. Unfortunately, I don't think that's happening enough in the smart contract world. But anyway, there you go. The MonoX hack explained. I hope it makes more sense to you now, and also gives you a more general sense as to the problems that are being faced in the DeFi world, and that we're not really seeing massive progress in at the moment. So hopefully this time next year, things will be looking a lot better. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next episode soon. Bye for now.